Good evening. It's Friday, and you're listening to Betrayal on Armed Radio. I'm your host, Kasy, and today we're going to be discussing some true crime events. Now, with back to school happening right now, some kids are already back to school, and some are going to be starting school very, very soon. I wanted to kind of go over some true crime events that happened. Last week we listened to the first mass shooting event that happened at the University of Texas in Austin. Well, this one is another school shooting. There are quite a few public shootings. Just recently, the El Paso shooting that I was telling you about, to where I actually went to the mall, and I was inside the mall years ago, where close by where the shooting occurred. I might even been in that Walmart. I have no idea if it's a brand new Walmart or a older Walmart. But speaking of Walmart, I went to my local Walmart store, and for the first time ever, and this was so weird for me to see this, is that there was, you walk into the Walmart, and in order to go inside where the main grocery side is, you have to clear through this gate. They have a gate. You have to go through this gate, and then if you want to leave, you can't go back through the gate. You have to go through the checkout, and it's like in the center of the store. And I'm thinking to myself, you can actually jump over this gate that opens, but if there is some sort of incident that's happening, and the assailants, and quite a bit, if they jump over the gate, nobody's going to be able to escape out. They're going to have to go to the center of the store or the back of the store to escape. I just don't think it's a good idea. They say it's for, security and anti-theft, but I mean, we kind of all know what the true reason is. So if you start seeing at your Targets and things like that, people following suit with detectors at the entrance, which, looking at metal detectors inside grocery stores reminds me of the Handmaid's Tale story, which I just finished watching season 3, and a lot of what's in that show basically mirrors what's going on here in this country, and it's so surreal. It really truly is incredibly surreal. But I also, before we talk about the subject of this show today, I just wanted to remind you that my book, The Devil's Business, is available on Amazon. It's still number 1 in some categories. Some categories it's still on the top list, which thank you so much. And thank you so much for everybody who's retweeting it on Twitter and reading the books and everything. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Also, you get a free copy of the Kindle version of the book, and I am working on the audiobook of that, which will be out very soon, hopefully. But thank you so much, and please continue to support this show and help it grow. And if you have any show topic ideas or anything like that, I do read Twitter. So if you go to Simply Kasy on Twitter and use the hashtag Betrayal, I will see that you are tweeting on there, and I can answer questions or anything like that. And if you do retweet or like my books and things like that, I go into your page and I start retweeting and liking your stuff too. I also follow back as well. So if you want to grow your audience, that's a good place to do that. So let's get on with today's show. That's why you're listening. And it's not a funny subject. It's a nervous laugh that I have. We're going to be talking about Columbine. It happened in April of, well, not of this year, but back in 1999, April of 1999, this event occurred. And, oh my gosh, this event is considered, it was really just a shock to the system, just to be perfectly honest, to be watching people who should be safe in their schools except for bullies, which bullies are jerks and they always will be around, unfortunately. This happening. Now, of course, we have Sandy Hook and all those other schools. And what I found is that there has been a spike, a huge spike in bulletproof backpacks being bought for kids to take back to school. Now, back in my time, we didn't even have video camera surveillance footage inside our schools. And we didn't have security, had to go through security or anything like that. We just had our student IDs. For my last school, we had a student ID. I don't think I had a student ID for Lee High School and everything. And there was many ways to get in and out of Lee High School. I mean, there was ways you could sneak out of class and go to lunch early, which I did on a few occasions my junior year, and everything. And so, but now I doubt you could do that. It's just so different. In this program, we will listen to actual audio recordings from not only the 911 calls going into discussing I got a frog in my throat, discussing the events as it unfolds on that day, but we're going to hear possibly from survivors and other things of the events that happened on April 20th, 1999. 13 people were wounded and 20 others before the two assailants killed themselves. 10 people did lose their lives. And so we're going to just discuss all that. In fact, I actually know a survivor of the Columbine High School. He lives in Austin, and he's actually a home repair person. And I needed some repairs at my house, and we got to talking. He said, yeah, he goes, I went to Columbine High School, and I was there in 1999, and my best friend was killed. And he told me about the story and how it still affects him to this day and everything. And I was like, wow. As he's fixing my plumbing in the house and everything, he's, telling me this story. It's just amazing. That's, something that happened, so long ago. And this year would have been is the anniversary because it is 2019. Whew. So we're going to listen to all that there because I want you guys to hear and to learn so that we don't repeat. And unfortunately right now we are just repeating a whole bunch of mistakes. We're just not learning, I guess, or we just don't care, or we're just desensitized. I'm not exactly sure. You guys, we're almost into an election year. We're basically in the early stages of an election year. And, Congress, your president, your local government officials, if you don't like what they're doing, if you don't feel like they're listening to you, you have a right in this country right now, and that right can be taken away from you. In fact, there is discussion in the government about removing more of your rights. And I keep seeing, Gilead. Oh my goodness. If you watch The Handmaid's Tale and you see how rigid Gilead is and how women who once had the right to vote, who had once had the rights to read, to do whatever they want to, when they said we need to go back to basics, we need to go back to God, and men should make all the rules and decisions, and women are not allowed to read, they're not allowed to drive, they're not allowed to leave the house without an escort. And you could see how the Gilead is starting to break down with rebellion. And women were getting their hands. If they disobeyed their husband or they didn't do things, you would lose a finger if you were caught reading. You would lose, you would get burned, or you would get gouged and everything. And so our rights are not for sure, they're not guaranteed. They're rights. You have to fight for them. We fought to get them, you have to fight to keep them. And if you don't feel as though that the government officials that are in there are doing their job and representing you, which is what they're supposed to do, then you have to go to the polls. You have to vote. And you can't be just complacent and say, well, it's too much work to go in to vote. I don't have time for that. Or, my voice will not be heard. I've heard a lot of people who don't vote because they're like, well, no one cares. No one listens to me anyway. Well, no one's going to listen to you because you just don't do anything about it. And don't come, crying whenever you lose your rights. You got to go vote. One way or the other, whatever party you want to represent you have to vote for what you want into office. And if you like how things are going, then, keep those people in office, if you like how they're going. If you don't, you need to vote them out. And you need to continue to vote, protest, and do all those things. Because right now, you have the rights to do that. So, Columbine is another example of why people believe. This was the first real example, because this was really just the first notch, basically, in the gun violence, discussion. They did use automatic rifle, assault rifles to gun down all these students. And there's a big difference between a shotgun and an automatic assault rifle that can, basically it's like a machine gun. Do we need that in the public? I believe that ARs should not be available to the public. Rifles, handguns, I have less of an issue with that, but automatic weapons, there's an issue with that. Because if you had a semi-automatic, an automatic weapon, they could blow you away quite quickly. But the assault rifle, it is designed to penetrate a body, flatten, and basically eviscerate anything it comes in contact with. Which means if it comes in contact with human flesh, the chances of you surviving that wound is incredibly diminished. If you're shot with a shotgun, depends on the size of the shell, as big as a hole, you have a better chance of living with a shotgun or a handgun to a certain degree. Depends on where you're shot. I mean, if you're shot in a vital spot, it doesn't matter if you're with a revolver, you're gonna die. But it's a lot easier to, if you're having to reload, allow people to get away, as opposed to an assault rifle or an assault automatic weapon that just, just literally mows people down. It is a weapon that mows people down, if you want to think of that. Because it's designed for body count. It was actually originally designed as a military weapon, designed for war, designed to kill the enemy and everything. And it was deregulated. It was either, it might have been the Bush Sr. who deregulated. It might have actually been Clinton, I'm thinking, that deregulated the assault rifle, which right now with Epstein suicide and the Clintons, connection with that, which we'll probably do a show on that. It's going to be quite interesting. But going back to 1999, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were the ones who perpetrated this crime. A lot of times they were perceived in the press as people who were bullied. They were the outcasts who got fed up and then took it out on, the students of Columbine. And later on, it was discovered that they weren't quite as much outcast or bullied as it was perceived in the press. I guess we were trying to find some sort of justification of why someone would, just mow down their classmates and everything. Now, in high school, I was bullied quite severely. So much that it was horrible. I was so happy when I graduated. If I could have gone back and had the, quintessential high school experience, I probably been very sad when I graduated. I still have, things where I'm like, oh man, I wish I was back in high school, with what I know now. It would have been so much fun. I tried to have as much fun as I possibly could. I tried to do as much as I could when I was in high school. But, teenagers can be assholes. I mean, forgive me on that word, but they can be. Kids, can be assholes. Adults can be assholes. Everybody could be an asshole. We all have that capability of being an asshole. And Jimmy Bell, I'm so sorry. That's like, you're probably going ding, 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 ding with the censor button, but that's, I'm not going to say any more swear words here and everything. But they actually do say that word on television, so maybe I won't get so ding ding by iHeartRadio when we're played on that too. But yeah, let's just say this. People can be jerks. Teenagers and children can be jerks. It's just the way the world is. Sometimes it's just you gotta flip that switch and everything. Nobody's perfect. So, but Dylan and Eric, I don't know what was going through their mind, because their family, was stable. One of the, I think it's Eric Harris's or Klebold's mother goes around the country talking about Columbine, and she's a public speaker. And I mean, it must be a powerful story discussing how your child that you raised turned on all these students and then on to themselves. What went wrong as a parent? Because as a parent, you're going to think, what did I do wrong? Maybe if I was more stricter, maybe if I didn't do this, maybe if I did that. But sometimes people are just, something just clicks in them and they're just, evil just comes out. And sometimes you could raise them the right way, and then some sort of influence or other person influences them, and they just churn, they just snap. So we just don't know the psychology of what happened with them. As far as we understand, they just wanted to watch the world burn, and they enjoyed mowing down those kids. In fact, you can hear in the audio of the actual 911 calls, you can actually hear them enjoying themselves, mowing down people. In fact, one person who was fatally wounded was saying, "Please help me." And one of the assailants went, "I'll help you." Boom, boom, boom. Directly in his, either in his face or directly into him, killing him. I mean, what dies in you that you cannot show compassion? But then again, what dies in you that you have to mow down other students? And then when we go to Sandy Hook, oh my gosh. Whew, that is what motivates you to go kill children in kindergarten who are just learning their ABCs and how to read. What died in you that you kill children? But these Columbine students, the ones who were killed, the adults who were killed, they're someone's baby. There's someone's spouse. There's someone's child who's grown up or is about to be grown up, and everything. So let's go into the details of this particular situation. So Columbine High School is located in Littleton, Colorado. And two teenagers, Eric Harrison, who was 18, he was a legal adult, and Dylan Klebold, 17. So Eric Harris was actually, you know what? Dylan Klebold as well. They probably were seniors in high school. So they were both seniors in high school and close to graduating from high school, because April the 20th, 1999, that's the tail end of your senior year. I mean, April, May, you've got like that was like towards the last 6 weeks of school. I mean, you guys were on your way out. And so they killed 13 people and wounded more than 20 others before turning the guns on themselves and committing suicide. Because basically, when you start mowing down people, there's only two outcomes. Either you turn the gun on yourself and kill yourself, or if you don't, the police are going to kill you to apprehend you, or you get apprehended and then you're going to be in jail for a long time, for the rest of your life, if not, executed via either electrocution. Most of them do what is called lethal injection, where they give you a lethal injection and you die. And people have to witness that. So what happens is that you're behind this glass partition and you're strapped to a table, and you're actually given a moment to say your last words where your victims were not. And then you say your last words to the 12 people who are witnessing your execution. And then you're strapped down to this table. You're fed a lethal dosage of something, and then you are monitored. Your vitals are monitored until they cease. And then once they cease, they make sure to continue on your lethal injection, and they pronounce you dead, and then they take you off the table, and I guess your family comes to collect you if they wish to collect you, or you are buried in a mass, prison grave. And then that's the end of you. So, and also the fact is if you don't get shanked in jail because you're a nasty little person, because they do that a lot too. There's a hierarchy in jail. So at the time, this was the worst high school shooting in U.S. history. And that's quite a bit to say that, because at the time, I don't think there was any that I could recall of high school shootings. This was like the first one beside the University of Texas. So this was the worst high school shooting. And this also prompted the national debate on gun control and school safety, as well as a major investigation determined what motivated the gun people, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. So, 2009 would have been 10 years. So, it's been 20 years since this has occurred. And we're still debating guns. And it's probably due to the fact is that the NRA runs Washington with kickbacks and, money in the pocket, and people are getting rich off the blood of the innocent. So, and it's quite sick if you really and truly think of it. If you take all the party affiliations, because it's on both sides, you guys, if you take out party affiliations, because it's there, and you really dive down of who's actually running the government, it's the people who, it's the people who have the deep pockets and who have people in their pockets who can make the decisions in their favor. That's basically it. I don't think that's what the forefathers wanted. They wanted something that was a little bit more pure, but it's been corrupted. I mean, that doesn't matter what party you're affiliated with. It's corrupted on both sides. So, but basically, Eric and Dylan Klebold created a propane bomb. And so they put it in the cafeteria. They left, and they were sitting in the car waiting for it to explode. When it didn't explode, they went inside with guns to figure out what happened. Why did it not explode? Some people who I guess they liked, they said, you need to get out of here, and you need to go home and just stay home for the day. And so they put the bomb in the cafeteria. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was a bomb. It's a propane bomb that's designed to go off. And if you've ever had a house that has your hot water heater, if it's a propane water heater, that can potentially be a bomb inside of your house. So if you had like a gas leak, and you light something to light a candle, your house can explode and you could die. And you could take out the houses around. I mean, it's a pretty big explosive. And they put 2 propane tanks inside the cafeteria, inside backpacks, with timers designed to explode at a specific time. And when it didn't, they went in. So at approximately 11:19 a.m., Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, dressed in trench coats, began shooting fellow students outside Columbine High School, and the pair then moved inside, where they gunned down many of the victims in the library. You're actually going to listen to the recording from either was the teacher or a librarian who, there's telephones in the library, or at the library desk, where she's called 911 to explain what's going on, and then all of a sudden she ducks down, and you could hear them in there saying, come out, come out, come out, and they're just mowing down the students who the librarian or teacher said stand or be underneath the tables, and they're just shooting the students and everything. So basically, the library was hit the hardest on there, and the original goal was to hit the cafeteria the hardest, but that was changed to the library. So I guess the library was close to the cafeteria. It's horrible. Approximately 11:35 a.m., Klebold and Harris had killed 12 students and a teacher and wounded more than 20 other people. Shortly after 12 p.m., the two teens turned their guns on themselves because they figured that all the police, at this point, authorities were surrounding them, and the police, it was only a matter of time before the police, got inside and basically, ended things. There is part of the 911 call to where there was a maintenance man on the roof. He was doing maintenance. He actually figured out a way to use his pliers to lock where people couldn't come up into the roof. And so the helicopters, which were police, trying to assess the situation, they thought that the assailant was on the roof shooting down at the students when that was just a maintenance man. So you hear part of the 911 call where there's a man who's wearing a striped shirt who's on the roof. That's the maintenance person that we later find out. But when you're in an active situation, an active shooter situation, you take every lead possible. So sometimes it's so hard when you have an assailant at one zone and then you're seeing other people who are suspicious, because they also said there was a suspicious person on the football field behind a shed. And so that wasn't the case because they were actively both inside, pretty close to each other, mowing down students. So this was just maybe a person hiding out, which is you later find out after all the dust settles. But when you have an active situation, you're looking at everybody as a suspect. It does not matter who you are or how you're dressed. You're looking at everybody. And it's very scary because when they're evacuating people out of those situations, they require you to leave everything behind. You drop your backpack, you drop your purse, you drop everything. You just bring your person out, if you're disabled, your wheelchair out, and they check everything. And then they leave all your stuff inside there, and they literally go through all your personal effects as they're trying to walk over dead bodies and assess who is alive, who is dead. And then you have to go through those schools or active shooter situation and clean it up before the students can go back in there. For the El Paso shooting, people who were actually inside the Walmart were posting pictures on Facebook, and I actually took screenshots of this because I knew this was going to be taken down, of the deceased, where they fell and passed away, and also the government walking into the Walmart there. And I've got those pictures and everything because that's history, and they're going to take those down and basically remove those images. And there's a poor person who's right there by the front door who has a gunshot wound to the head, and his brains have exploded out, and there's a pool of blood. You also have people who are in the customer service area who were shot, and you see the blood on their clothes and everything like that, and they're walking out because they were shot, but they were basically probably not life-threatening, because they're wounds that can be taken care of, and you're going to live. You're just going to have a scar where the bullet entered you. It's probably just grazed by you, which you're very lucky. So that's basically what that is. I mean, you have close impact, and you have further away impact wounds and everything. So once these investigators go in to recreate, there's actually was surveillance. In fact, I saw the surveillance tapes of the Columbine shooting in real time, what was going on, along with the audio of the 911 calls. What happened was the maintenance were changing out the tapes, because back then you had VHS tapes. You had to change them out every 8 hours. And this was your security system recording the hallways. And so then you see the cafeteria and these 4 different locations, and you see these puffs of smoke from gunfire. And in the library, they said the library was filled with smoke, and the kids were supposed to be down on the ground. So that might have saved a lot of other students, because of the smoke would have hidden them underneath the tables, and they were just sitting there mowing down, just shooting any direction, whatever would hit. So yeah, it's terrible what's going on here. So during the investigation, they learned that Harris and Kleber had arrived in separate cars at Columbine. Harris parked in the juniors parking lot, and Kleber parked in the seniors parking lot. Some schools, they have sophomore, junior, senior parking Some only allowed juniors and seniors to park on campus, and some only allowed seniors to park on campus. So it just depends on your school. I know Lee High School had, I think, sophomore, junior, and senior parking. Trinity High School, where I graduated, I only went there 1 year, apparently only had only allowed seniors to leave campus, and they only had senior parking. Juniors and sophomores had to stay on campus, which that was wild to me because I was able to leave campus, from sophomore through, sophomore, junior year, where you would not have been able to on certain schools. So that definitely has probably changed quite a bit since I've been in school. So the two assailants arrived around 11:10 on the morning of the massacre. The two then walked into the school cafeteria, where they placed 2 duffel bags, each containing a 20-pound propane bomb set to explode at 11:17 a.m. And the reason why they put it in the cafeteria, because that was the meeting place, that was the place to be, and it would have the most amount of students. So that is why they placed them there inside the cafeteria. Now, 1 propane bomb would have done the trick. 2 would have probably brought the whole school down. Well, actually, the first one might have brought the whole, probably would have brought the school mostly down, and the second one would probably just leveled it. It's kind of like the atomic bomb going off if you had 2 of those. The teens then went back outside to their cars to wait for the bombs to go off. When the bombs failed to detonate, Harris and Kleber began their shooting spree. So, in the days immediately following the shooting, it was speculated that Harris and Kleber purposely chose athletes, minorities, and Christians as their victims. So they had a beef against all those. It was initially reported that one student, Kasy Burnell, was asked by one of the gunmen if she believed in God. When Burnell allegedly said yes, she was shot to death. Her parents later wrote a book titled "She Said Yes," honoring their daughter. So they had a beef against God. So, yeah, that's terrible. It's terrible to do something like that. But later on, it was determined the question was not posed to Burnell, but to another student who already had been wounded by a gunshot. When the victim replied yes, the shooter walked away. So, you just can't know some of the more intimate details. Only the gunmen and the victims and the people who encountered it know more intimate detail. You only know cursory information. So it was determined that Harris and Kleber chose their victims randomly, and the 2 teens originally had intended to bomb their school, potentially killing hundreds of students. There was also speculation that Harris and Kleber committed the killings because they were members of a group of social outcasts called the Trenchcoat Mafia that was fascinated by the Gothic culture. It also was speculated that Harris and Kleber had carried out the shooting as retaliation for being bullied. So they thought that they were Gothic or part of the Mafia or Trenchcoat Mafia. Additional violent video games and music were blamed for influencing the killers. But none of these were ever proven. Now, granted, I've listened to some stuff in my time that is pretty wild and everything like that. I mean, high school, the thing is that we listened to Lords of Acid, and that was huge in the clubs, and we had 9 Inch Nails, and we had Marilyn Manson, and we had Naughty by Nature, we had Tupac and Snoop Dogg and things like that, and all that kind of stuff. Ice-T, Ice Cube, you name it. And so, we also had the Rodney King going on, and OJ, well, that was right before OJ Simpson, and everything. So, I don't know. And of course, we had video games. They're not as violent as they are. I mean, video games nowadays are so realistic. It's very realistic. It looks like real people on the screen. And the music right now, it's kind of lame, if you think of it. It's just lame music. So I don't think I would be the music per se. And in 1989, most of the music on the charts was about stripping. To be perfectly honest. I mean, you got your Britney Spearses, you got your Backstreet Boys, your NSYNC. It was all that kind of music. And then, of course, you had the Nine Inch Nails and things like that. But it's not really, I don't know. It was later not determined that was it. Of course, 1989, the video games were nowhere compared to what they are now. Those are pretty darn sophisticated games. So, they also found the journals left behind by Harris and Klebold, because once they, determine it's you two guys who are the perpetrators of this, they go obtain warrants and they check your parents' house. And they thoroughly check it. They check everything. They check your computer. They check your phone. They check your friends. They check every aspect of your life. No stone unturned, basically, will be done. I mean, they'll check everything. Heck, they'll go back to your kindergarten teacher if she's still alive or he's still alive, and they'll check that. So, yeah. So what they found was that they had journals that they wrote into. And so they discovered that in these journals, that these teens had been planning for a year to bomb the school in an attack similar to the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. Do you remember when we discussed Waco? And then Oklahoma was the result of the Waco siege, because Oklahoma City bomber, he blamed Waco and how that took place, and that's why he bombed Oklahoma City, the federal building. Well, basically, these teens were using the methods used in the Oklahoma City bombing as a way to educate them on how to do this one. Now, also, I must remind you, is that in 1999, it was the early ages of the internet. Not a lot of people were sitting there surfing. I don't remember surfing on Google. I do remember AOL and Yahoo, where you did your searching. But it was not as sophisticated as today, where you can just Google and you find massive amount of information. It was very, take about more than half of that away, and it was very limited information. So you still had to go to libraries and things like that to do your research, and not everybody had a computer. And not everybody had cell phones. It was still pretty expensive. So it's not like it is today, where we have access to technology and everything like that at our touch of our fingertips. So during also this investigation of these, information there, it was discussed that Kleber was depressive, who journaled obsessively about love and attended the Columbine prom 3 days before opening fire on the students. So they had just experienced their prom, which would have been their senior prom. Due to our time constraints, we are going to end up running out of time with dealing with this Columbine discussion. Now, I felt as though it was important to listen to the audio recordings. So during my research, I was looking at the different ways that they were entering the school and what was going on. And I realized is that if I was in school, I probably would have been in the library. I would probably have been in the science hall and definitely in the art hall, the theater arts hall. And that's where the majority of the shooting took place. It actually took place inside the library. And what you're going to hear is the actual 911 call from the library, where you can actually hear Eric and Dylan in the background taunting the students before they shoot them. They are going to be using the N-word and swear words in this. It's hard to distinguish what they're saying because all you hear is this pop, pop, pop in the background. That is gunfire being done, and those are people screaming and being killed in this audio. It is graphic. You hear the woman who is behind the library table, which is basically at the front and at the epicenter. You can also hear Dylan and Eric smacking on the top of the table right above her head saying peekaboo. And that's pretty scary when they've got guns. They actually were able to run back to a location near the computers, which was a bit of a distance away, to reload, come back, and they went all the way around this library. I mean, they went up and down walkways, everything underneath the tables. Once they figured out the kids were underneath the table, they started shooting underneath the tables. And these kids were so terrified and paralyzed by fear, rightfully so, because they didn't know how many shooters there were. And so they were basically sitting ducks at this point. And when you look at the picture of the student crawling out of the window or falling out of the window, that is the library. The library is on the second floor. And actually, Eric and Dylan were looking out the library window and shooting out into the where the police officers, they refer to them as pigs in this audio, and they were shooting out into the parking lot area and killing people down below there too. And you see that dramatic picture of the kid coming out of the window and being rescued. In fact, the police did something called a stand down, where they were not going into the school, and there was a lot of flack over that, of them not going into the school. But anyway, we're going to end with that recording, and I will see you next week. Be safe out there.
Jefferson County 911.
Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. He has shot out a window. I believe one student
I've been Columbine High School.
I don't know what's in my shoulder. If it was just a last beat or what.
Okay, has anybody been injured, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the school is in a panic. And I'm in the library. I've got students down under the tables, kids. Heads under the tables. Kids are screaming. Some of the teachers are, trying to take control of things. We need police here.
Okay, we're getting them there.
Police here.
Who is the student, ma'am?
I do not know who the student is.
Okay.
I saw a student outside. I was in hall duty. Oh, God. Okay. I was on hall duty. I saw a gun. I said, what's going on out there? And he said, oh, it's probably for video production. It's probably a joke. I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And I went walking outside. I think he was down to see what was going on. He turned the gun straight at us and shot. And my God, the window went out. And the kid standing there with me, I think he got hit.
Okay.
Something in my shoulder.
Okay. We've got help on the way, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Stay on the line with me.
Oh, God. Hey, kids, just stay down.
Do we know where he's at?
I'm sorry?
Do we know where he's at?
Okay. I'm in the library. He's upstairs. He's right outside of here.
He's outside?
He's outside of this hall.
Outside of a hall or outside?
This hall.
Okay.
There are alarms and things going off now. Smoke. My God, smoke is like coming into this room.
Okay.
I've got the kids under the table here. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the building. Most of like smoke in the building. I don't know. I'm sure someone has to be calling 911 to fight.
Yes, we've got a lot of people on. Okay. I just want you to stay in the line with me. We need to know what's going on.
Okay.
Okay?
I am on the floor.
Okay. And you've got the kids
in the
there?
library. And I've got every student in this library on the floor. You better stay on the floor.
Is there any way you can lock the doors?
Smoke is coming in from out there, and I'm a little afraid. The gun is right outside the library door, okay? I don't think I'm going to go out there.
Okay, you're at Columbine High School?
I got 3 children.
Okay, we got it.
Okay? I'm not going to go to the door to shut the door, okay? I've got the kids on the floor. I got all the kids in the library on the
We have paramedics, we have fire, and we have police en route, okay, sir?
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I can't believe he's not out of bullets. He just keeps shooting and shooting and shooting.
Okay, yeah, we've got a police officer on scene.
I thought it was...
Okay, just try and keep the kids in the library calm.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can block the door so no one can get in?
I do not...
Okay.
I guess I can try to go, but I mean, he's right outside that door. I'm afraid to go to the...
That's okay.
That's where he is. I'm not afraid to go there, okay?
That's okay.
Okay, I told the kids to get on the floor. I told them to get under the table. All of the children are on the floor under the table. Yeah, they're all under the tables.
Okay.
And
as long as we can just try and keep...
No one's saying a word.
Okay, as long as we can keep everyone there as calm as we can.
I hear some yelling out there going on right now.
Yeah, we've got alarms going off now as well.
Yeah, there's alarms. This room is filled with smoke.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep everyone low to the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's up. Okay. Everyone stay on the floor. Stay on the floor. Stay under the table.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, I know, just...
I don't know. I didn't... I said, what is that kid got? He was outside at the time. And I was on call duty. Oh, God. And he was trying, he was like, woo, woo, woo.
I know.
Things are being shut off. I do not know who the student was. I don't even think I saw him. He was wearing black. He didn't look very large. Male student. He was out there shooting. It looked like he was pointing out and shooting. And somebody, I said, what is that? I said, what's going on out there? This wiretap gun. It's probably for video production. You know, they do these videos.
Right.
And the kids, I said, well, that's not, you know, a play gun, a real gun. I was going out there to say no. And I went, oh my God, that was really close. That just rattled me.
Okay. What's your name, ma'am? Patty?
Yelling everybody get up right now. Please go to the library. Keep hearing everybody get up right now.
Okay.
I have him in the library shooting at students. The lady that I have in the library on the phone.
Okay, try and keep as many people down as we can. Okay. Do you know who he is? Okay.
Get under the desk, okay?
Okay, I have just a few moments and I wanted to take the time to tell about the 12 students and the one teacher who was killed. Rachel Scott, 17, she was the first person killed, and she was killed outside of the school. She was eating lunch with her friend Richard Castile on the grouse outside the entrance of the school. Daniel Rathborn, 15, he was killed. Oh my gosh. He was near the park eating his lunch with a Dr. Pepper in his hand when the gunman approached him. He was killed. He was found on the sidewalk outside. And his father found him, was notified of his death by looking in the newspaper and seeing his son's dead body on the sidewalk. That's how he found out. Dave Sanders, 47, he was a teacher. He remained to try and secure as much of the school as he could, but eventually ran into the shooters. He was shot in the back and neck, and as he tried to escape in the opposite direction, he was in the cafeteria. Basically, he threw a pipe bomb out of the way for the kids down the hallway. And so he was trying to help students. Kyle Velasquez, 16. He was killed inside the library. He was at the computers. He was shot in the back of the head. This is where the two assailants put their backpack And that's what they ran back to. Stephen Cornell, 14 years old. He was, oh my gosh, he was killed also, I believe, in the library with the rest of the students, with these other students. A lot of these students were killed in the library. That's where the majority of the students were killed. Kasy Bernal, 17. She was under the computer table, and that's where he said peekaboo and proceeded to kill her. Isaiah Scholes, 18. And so he was actually pulled, he was actually called the N-word. He was pulled from underneath the table. He was fighting back, and he was pulled from underneath the table and shot. And so basically, because he was not pulled out of the table all the way, they shot him. And the other two survivors were playing dead in the pool of blood from his friend's dying body. That's how they survived, is being in his friend's blood to look like they were dead. Matthew Kitcher, 16. He was shot in the chest and died alongside his pal Isaiah in the library. And Lauren Townsend, 18. She died on the library floor after being shot several times in the head, chest, and lower body. I believe she was the one saying, "Oh God, oh God," and the assailant said, "Do you believe in God?" And I think she said yes, no, and because she was just confused. And then he said, "Well, God's gay," and then pop, 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 and killed her. And you could hear that sound. John Tomlin, 17. He was spending his lunch break in the library studying when they came into the library. They went around and they shot him point blank in the head. And Nicole was shot. I guess his sister was shot in the stomach, but she survived. Kelly Fleming just transferred to Columbine. She was 16. And she was writing a poem as usual in the library when Harris entered. She tried to hide underneath the table, but she was partially visible. They came up behind Kelly and shot her in the back. Her body was found close to Lawrence. And you're going to find out a lot of these people were clustered together. Daniel Masser, 15. He was hidden underneath the table and pushed a chair in front of him when Harris approached in the attempt to knock him over. Harris commented nice glasses before he shot Daniel in the face. And so Daniel was researching the American gun laws and asked his dad about the loopholes in the Brady bill. That's the gun law bill. And he was shot by a gun while questioning gun laws. Corey DePorter, 17. And his friend Stephen Austin Eubanks watched as Cleveland aimed a semi-automatic weapon at Corey and pulled the trigger. So he was shot there. They basically, it says that they murdered 13 people in cold blood, left 24 people with serious injuries, and at least 21 people were shot before they shot themselves. So Harris sat down with his back to the bookshelves and shot himself through the roof of his mouth. Klebold went down on his knees and shot himself in the left temple. That's how they committed suicide. And basically, Lance Kirkland, 16, was hit in the jaw. He has permanent injuries and scarring from that. A lot of these kids, they have I mean, all those kids have permanent scars, but some have actual physical scars and permanent damage. Some were paralyzed as a result of this. So we need to change. That's all I can say, because I'm out of time. But we need to change this world in our hearts, in our minds. And I hope you guys are safe out there. Until next week. Bye-bye.